Just as soon as Jeff Petry arrived in Montreal, he shipped back out as Kent Hughes pulls off what we think is maybe one of the more underwhelming trades he's made as Petry gets sent to the Detroit Red Wings for a defensive kind of prospect and a 4th-round pick. We'll be talking about that, plus Paul Byron is about to retire, and we'll talk about his impact on the Habs organization on this edition of Habs Digest. And as we get into the first topic, Jeff Petry, reminder, if you're one of the thousands of people watching who haven't subscribed, hit it now. We want to hit 10,000. I know you guys want to see us hit 10,000, so if you haven't hit it yet, hit it now. We'd really appreciate it. Jesse, Jeff Petry is off to Detroit. He was sent to the Detroit Red Wings at 50% retained. We figured the Habs might do this if they got a decent return, but they get back Gustav Lindstrom, who was really a 3rd pairing or 7th D-man for Detroit this past year, and a conditional 4th-round pick, as in the worst between Dallas and Detroit's 4th-round picks in 2025. Now, I gotta say, when I first read this trade, I was a little bit underwhelmed. I felt that if we were going to retain Petry at 50%, we'd get a little more back than that. What were your first reactions when you saw this trade?
Well, I was never really expecting the moon in a trade for Jeff Petry, just because I feel like a lot of teams around the league, they kind of know, okay, at 35 years old, he's not exactly the best fit. So we didn't necessarily have all the leverage in the world. We kind of knew that he did want to most likely go back to an American market, So at the same time, I'm kind of happy for Jeff because he has played many solid years of hockey for the Canadiens. For many years, you could argue he was our best defenseman. Mm-hmm. So he's getting to go back home right now. So it's got to be really nice for him. But I think Kent Hughes, he might have some other reasons for making this trade as well, which I definitely like to talk about.
Yeah, we got some interesting takes on this. So while I think both of us were a little like, that's it for Petry at 50% retained. Also, Detroit, reunite Sherratt and Petry as a pairing, you cowards. Do it. We want to see it. Let's take a look at this, though. In the big picture, Jesse, Lindstrom is 24. He just had 8 points, 1 goal, 7 assists in 36 games with Detroit last season. And realistically, he was either the 3rd pairing or sitting in the press box. 6'2", but he's not that heavy at just 183. He's a solid player. He was picked in the 2nd round in 2017. But let's look at the grand scheme of the trade here. They say that Petry was acquired from the Penguins along with Casey DeSmith and Nathan Legare in a 2nd for Mike Hoffman and Rem Pitlick. But if we think of this as a whole, Jesse, if we think of this not as 2 separate moves, but as one major move, actually, what if we just include the Petry trade from last year? Realistically, Montreal traded away and got back Jeff Petry, so all in all, Montreal is basically eating 30-ish%, 35% of Jeff Petry's salary, and they had to give away Mike Hoffman, Rem Pitlick, and Ryan Poehling. And that's it. They ate 30% of his salary. They gave away those 3 players. What did they get in return? Mike Matheson, Nathan Legare, Casey DeSmith, Gustav Lindstrom, a 2nd, and a 4th. I think a lot of fans who are saying this is an L of a trade by Kent Hughes fail to see this big picture, right? And to me, when you look at it as a whole trade like that, it just seems like highway robbery.
It's true. And, with Gustav Lindstrom, when Kent Hughes was talking about it in a presser just very recently, he feels like Lindstrom's at like 70% of where he could be in the future. Still not very old at 24 and was a former high draft pick, so Kent Hughes has been very good at doing these sneaky moves before where we're kind of getting somebody back where it doesn't really look like much at all. But again, a player kind of young enough in that system, kind of in that wheelhouse of that age that Kent Hughes really wants to develop the team because he does have a longer term plan. If he's not ruling out Lindstrom at all, but he's saying, if he does kind of turn into more of an everyday NHLer, he's going to be right in that perfect age group with the rest of these players. So you can see that Kent Hughes, again, he has a whole strategy behind this and where he kind of wants to spend his money on. And, Jeff Petry, wasn't exactly it long term, right? Mm-hmm. So he wants to be very wise with that, kind of finding those right fits.
Yeah, exactly. And if we take a look at the Habs depth chart here now this is on cap friendly. Of course, you have Matheson, Savard, Guhle, Kovacevic, Harris, and Xhekaj. And then you see Lindstrom there in the scratches along with Chris Weidman. And this also doesn't include Justin Barron, who they currently have in the AHL just for salary purposes at this point. But you think about it. I mean, Weidman, you got to think won't play very much. But you have Lindstrom and Barron both on the outside looking in at this Habs roster. One aspect of this that I think some people are maybe not necessarily considering is Lindstrom is going to force a lot of these other guys to really step up their game if they want to make the team because Lindstrom has multiple seasons of NHL experience. Do you see that as like being a bit of a motivating factor for someone like Xhekaj, someone like Kovacevic, someone like Barron heading into training camp?
It's a good Laval Rocket team to begin with. And, this move is doing nothing but just strengthening that, right? Like, I would be so happy to see the Laval Rocket contending for a Calder trophy this year. And we don't want to underestimate the success of even, let's say, he plays with the Rocket, he plays really well. If your AHL team is doing good and it's healthy, it's an incredibly good sign for the big club. So I think that that's definitely something to look at. But, again, right-handed D, we obviously with the draft, we made some moves to kind of solidify that. Obviously, we have some great prospects coming up, Logan Mailloux, Justin Barron, who's already got a taste in the NHL. But like you said, all this does nothing but just kind of further that internal competition, and just because we drafted right-hand defense, it's always good just to get those prospects, right? Not just those draft picks, those prospects, maybe a little bit further. And, maybe our development team can do something amazing like we've been doing of late.
Yeah, his name is close enough to Lindstrom, and he came from Detroit. I mean, maybe he's just going to be an all-timer, right? You never really know, but it'd be really exciting to see what he can do, how this Habs D-core pans out, because I think now after all these moves, that's probably the biggest question that the Habs have heading into training camp. How do they figure out their D-core? Are there more moves coming? There probably will be, and we'll probably have another video kind of discussing that very soon. But for now, we'll leave it to you guys. What do you think of this Jeff Petry trade? Were you a bit underwhelmed with the return, or do you think that, it's kind of a Kent Hughes doing Jeff Petry a solid? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. But Jesse, to end this video off, we got a bit of sad news. Paul Byron seems to be set to retire. In Kent Hughes' press conference, he was asked about Paul Byron, and he was a little uncomfortable as he answered. He said, look, I better just let Paul announce it, but his contract is terminated, his contract is done. But from what I know, Paul doesn't really have plans to move to Montreal. I believe that he would like to announce his retirement himself, and Hughes was clearly a little uncomfortable. But he also said he was going to discuss with Byron about Byron maybe taking on a role with the Habs organization. And Jesse, we know that Paul Byron and Carey Price have been around the Habs for the past year, 2 years. Even when they've been injured, they've been there with the young guys at practices, at little training sessions themselves. So would you like to see Paul Byron back, and what does his retirement mean to you? Because to me, he's so electric, and he'll always be immortalized, especially for that breakaway goal in Game 1 against the Leafs.
That's so true. Definitely a big thank you to Paul Byron first off. And yeah, to answer your second question, Josh, is, you got to feel like there's a great fit. We saw even videos recently from our development camps with our rookies and him just speaking up in the locker room, and you could tell it really fit him, right? He's one of those players that likes to spend a lot of time on the ice, helping players with their games. I think he still has a lot to offer in a lot of ways. We know during his career that, he really kind of turned nothing into something, right? He wasn't too highly touted, but then between 2016, 2018, 2 20-goal seasons, 22 goals, another 20 goals. We'll always remember him for that speed where just seemingly you're watching the game and then Paul Byron is just on a breakaway out of nowhere, right? Just had this real capability of doing that, obviously from close to my hometown of Ottawa as well, a fellow Ottawa native. So, I mean, all the best for him. Obviously, an amazing NHL career, and seems like he'll be able to continue this with coaching. So, I mean, that's really great for him to see.
Yeah, not only did he get a ton of breakaways, he was extremely effective on those breakaways. His speed out of nowhere, his acceleration was, one of the top in the NHL in that regard, right? And that's kind of why the Habs got him. They saw scouting tapes. There's a nice little online meme. A lot of you guys probably don't really know much about it, but someone on Reddit posted on the Habs subreddit and said, hey, look at all the breakaways Byron gets. Habs management said, we saw that video, and that's part of the reason we signed him. And look at what he did for Montreal. His most iconic goal as a Hab involves him breaking away with insane speed, beating out the defender, falling to his knees, chipping it over the Leafs goalie. So Paul Byron's going to be missed, but hopefully he sticks around with the organization. We're going to miss him on the ice, but hey, all the best to him and congrats on retirement. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000. We'd really appreciate your support if you hit that button right now. I'm Josh Gosse for my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.